Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, wherever you are coming to us in the world. Thanks so much for being here. We're really excited to be having this conversation today. Thanks so much to our presenting partner, Golden Agri Resources. And today we're going to be talking about palm oil and why we need a multi-stakeholder approach to making it a more sustainable industry. I think we all know there are a lot of challenges posed there, so we're going to be talking about those, but also talking about some solutions and what the global community needs to be doing to usher this along. We've got a two-part event for you today. My colleague Richard Jones will be joining us for a fireside chat. He will sort of kick off the discussion, lay the groundwork, and then I will be back with you for a panel discussion with some additional panelists. So Richard, over to you to get us started.
Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Jones, Editorial Director at Devex, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Anita Neville, Chief Sustainability and Communications Officer at Golden Agri Resources, and Ainu Rofik, Chief Operating Officer at Coltiva. So welcome to you both. Really looking forward to hearing more today about traceability and efforts to improve the sustainability of palm oil. So Anita, welcome. Maybe I could turn to you first and ask you to give us some brief context. Where do we find ourselves today? Why is traceability so important? What kind of impact is this having on producers, particularly smallholders, and how are efforts to improve traceability really helping to transform the supply chain?
Thanks, Richard. It's great to be here. I think in order to understand where we are today, we really have to look backwards and look at where we were 7 years ago, which was the palm oil sector as a whole, and GAR in particular, really didn't have a good handle on its supply chain. The palm oil supply chain is notoriously complex, made up of many, many actors, individual smallholders in the millions, as well as a range of small and medium enterprises, and of course, large players like ourselves. So it wasn't really until 2015 when Golden Agri Resources, GAR as we're known, started to really put effort into understanding who was who in our supply chain and to map out those actors. We kicked off with understanding traceability to the mill level, which we achieved at the end of 2015. And then since then, we've been looking at how to get to the plantations, to the farms, to the individual fresh fruit bunches. And that has been our focus and effort. Since 2015, we achieved that 100% traceability to plantation for our own mills at the end of 2017. And since 2017, we've been working on our third-party supply chain, which is made up of more than 350 mills in any given year, each of which have many, many suppliers that they're buying fresh fruit bunches from. And that's where technology and partnership and collaboration really comes into its own in order to help us achieve our ultimate goal, which is 100% traceability to plantation.
And on that partnerships piece, perhaps you could give us some background on how GAR and Coltiva came to work together, how you're improving traceability and why this work is so important in terms of sustainability.
We're really fortunate to work with Coltiva, which is essentially a homegrown, from an Indonesian grower's perspective, a homegrown technology solution, helping to connect us with farmers and actors in our supply chain. We were looking for ways to accelerate the traceability process. You know, it's a lot of data collection. It's been very manually driven in the past, a lot of extensive Excel sheets and handwritten notes. And we knew we needed to work with a different kind of solution in order to achieve change at scale. And Coltiva came to us with a track record in other crops and a solution that I think takes the best of technology. And I'll let Rafik talk about how it works exactly, It takes the best of technology and a real understanding of farmers, and so the sort of human context. And that has helped us not just to get very close to our target of 100% traceability to plantation. We're at about 95% now. COVID has, of course, stalled us a little bit, but with the help of Cultiva, we've mapped hundreds of thousands of smallholders. We're at about 120,000 smallholders that we've mapped in our supply chain, and Cultiva has been a big part of getting those numbers.
That's great. Thanks, Anita. And turning to Rofik, welcome. Cultiva describes itself as a farmer-first agri-tech firm. You're active in 14 countries around the globe. Can you give us your perspective on how the partnership with GAR really helps to better engage with farmers on the ground, and how you're harnessing tech solutions to really make a difference here?
Yeah, as mentioned by Anita, we got approached from GAR since 2017. Cultiva offered exactly the solution needed to how to map into the plantation level, especially from smallholder. So we provide like end-to-end platform. We call it CultiTrace for palm oil. We provide mobile application for our field agent or field agent from the mills, and also provide mobile application for dealer, agents, farmers, and also agri-input shop to map all the smallholder farmers, and also to providing web application for mills and refinery to help actor to see the progress on the mapping on the smallholder level, to provide full real-time traceability until plantation level to verify like deforestation and also sustainability production practices of smallholders, because this is really big chunk on the supply chain, yeah, especially on palm oil in Indonesia, because almost more than 50% the supply chain are coming from smallholder farmer. Yeah, we are basically an agri-tech company. Yes, correct. We are a global tech company. We believe that, but the tool is only the tech is only the tool. What makes the work at Cultiva unique is we combine the tool, our CultiTrace application, with boots on the ground services. Farmers still appreciate like face-to-face visit. The boots on the ground are still required to do verification of the data, providing training and coaching to the farmers, and implement their farm development plans to reach out like certification standards such as RSPO or ISPO. So I can give you an example on how we combine technology and boots on the ground towards sustainability practices. We have a multi-stakeholder project with GAR. We call it Sawit Terampil, funded by GAR, Mars, and Fuji Oil. We apply our unique data-driven one-on-one coaching methodology to get smallholder farmer RSPO and ISPO certification ready. Traditionally, many NGOs provide group training, but as many know that sometimes not the right farmers can be targeted. It is difficult to keep their attention for a day or 2-day training. Then this leads the low adoption on the good agricultural practices. Our Cultiva data-driven is one-on-one coaching methodology that exactly can tackle this issue. Our training and coaching specialists visiting farmers on their farm and provide coaching session including practices based on the previous data collection that we conducted before. This allow coaching session is to be tailor-made based on the needs of the farmer on every plantation they have. So farmer also can access technology. If they have smartphone, they can access gamified training material to farm cloud application to dig deeper into the certain topics of interest. In CultiTrace palm oil, client can also track the progress in real time, which provide complete transparency of project progress and impact to the funder of the project, to the funder of the project.
That's great. That's great, Rofik. And maybe sort of continuing that thread, thinking about the training piece, thinking about the digital piece, thinking about the human-centered piece, working with farmers on the ground. What would you say is a key obstacle that you've overcome in terms of this partnership, and how do you keep scaling up the initiative? What's next for the Cultiva-GAR partnership?
Basically, Traceability provide the beginning of sustainable sourcing. Sustainability start with traceability. Know your supplier. Identifying smallholder in the supply chains allow identify the problem and challenge, such as land legality, ineffective application of fertilizer, pest and disease, social and worker issue. And after the issue has been identified, that's what we start working since 2017. We continue with approach the farmer for multi-stakeholder farm projects, which is Sawit Terampil, with previous identification smallholder farmer towards the RSPO and export certification. Basically, to scale up this initiative, it will require multi-stakeholder approach, because there are several million smallholders across Indonesia and Malaysia, for example. Currently, we register for 120,000 farmers, smallholder, with under 68 independent mills that are already in our quality-trace palm oil platform. To provide full transparency, actors have to work together, use a common platform. Hence, it will be important to get the supplier upstream and downstream on board to support the initiative.
Thanks, Rofik. And maybe turning to you, Anita, what's been your highlights or your main takeaway from the partnership so far?
Well, I think Rafik really touched on the key things. First of all, GAR is a farmer, first and foremost. We manage our own plantation estates, 500,000 hectares of them across Indonesia. And I think the fact that we have been doing this work, understanding our own business in this way, applying sustainable practices in our own business, gave us some credit in the bank when we started to talk to our supply chain and asking them to do this work also. So we traced our own mills back to the plantation first, which included obviously our own plantation estates, but we also have third-party suppliers that supply to our own mills. And because we'd done the work ourselves, I think it makes it easier to go and talk to your third-party suppliers and ask them to do the work. Then find the right partner. So Cultiva for us has been the right partner because they share our belief that technology is a tool, that you need to have a human touch to encourage adoption of technology that helps you to fast track and move forward, and that traceability is really just the first step towards true sustainability or transformation of the sector. Those things combined have allowed us to be really successful since we've been modeling our supply chain with Cultiva, adapting different practices. And I'm really excited about the next iteration of our partnership, which is looking at how the tool can provide more information, more services, more two-way communication between ourselves and the farmers in our supply chain.
Yeah, you make a good point, Anita. And maybe since time is short, a final thought from each of you on what's needed in terms of investment, in terms of allocation of resources. How do you hit these ambitious traceability and sustainability targets that you've set for yourselves? Maybe I could go to Rofik first.
The tools and the boots on the ground is really key, and we are always like facing the challenge, lesson learned, collaborative with all the stakeholders, including the farmers as a center, and also the all supply chain is work together to make to reach out all the supply chain to make sustainability happen.
That's great, Rofik, thanks. And maybe a final thought from you, Anita. Aside from staying online with us for our panel session coming up next, what's the single most important thing that you'd like to see this Devex audience take away with them?
So I'd say two things. First is remember the technology with the human heart piece. The boots on the ground matter. Still today, technology can do lots of things, but we still need people to be part of that, to participate in the process. And the second is the importance of upstream and downstream investment. Our partnership with Mars and our work with Cultiva is one example. We'd love many, many more. So if there are people out there who want to participate in the transformation of the palm sector after today's session, please get in touch. We're eager to find other partners who want to participate in this process.
Many thanks indeed. Anita, Neville, Ainu, Rofik, thank you for spending time with us today. It's really been great to learn more about the work of Golden Agri Resources and Cultiva. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And Teresa, it's back over to you.
Thank you so much, Richard. Now I am so pleased to be joined by our panel to continue this conversation. Today, we are joined by Ruqaiya Rafiq, who is a farmer school principal at Fortasby, Joel Brownen, who is the country manager of the Solidaridad Network in Colombia, and Inky Vandersluis, who is the Director of Market Transformation at our SPO. Welcome to you all. Thanks so much for being with us this morning, or afternoon, or evening. We've got quite the global panel here today. To kick off our conversation, we have a question posed to us from our community. So we are going to go ahead and play that and then kick off our discussion.
This is Gloria Palares, international reporter speaking from Barcelona in Spain. I am a member of the Rainforest Journalism Investigations Network of the Pulitzer Center, which is based in Washington, D.C. In the past year, our group of journalists has uncovered deforestation and abuses linked to a number of commodities: beef, textiles, minerals, and palm oil. We are consuming these products without ever knowing their cost to some of the world's most vulnerable ecosystems and communities. Across sectors, deforestation is enabled by a lack of traceability, by a lack of supply chain transparency, and by insufficient oversight. So how are companies that produce or use palm oil working to prove that their products are really deforestation-free?
Thanks so much, Gloria, for that question. Ingo, we're going to start off with you. I think you are the best person to respond directly to Gloria and get our conversation going.
Thank you so much, Teresa, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. So the RSPO, the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, was founded in 2004 as a membership-based organization. Today, we have more than 5,200 members globally in more than 100 countries. So it's a membership-based organization with the 7 stakeholder groups present, which are the growers, processors and traders, consumer goods manufacturers, retailers, but also environmental and social NGOs, banks and investors. So these 7 stakeholder groups together defined what sustainable production looks like. So sustainable production, according to the RSPO, comes with the protection of forests and peatlands and other important ecosystems, as well as respect for human rights. And there, think about workers' rights, women's rights, and children's rights.
Thanks so much, Inka. Uki, we're going to come to you next to really get at why we're here today, which is, to talk about the impact this is having on the farmers themselves and sort of how all of this is connected. So tell us a little bit about the impact that all of these efforts has on smallholders. What are some of the largest challenges facing smallholders that are trying to move towards sustainable palm oil production?
Okay, thank you, Teresa, for the question, and thank you for Devex to invite me to discussing today. And firstly, I want to explain what maybe shortly explanation about what the Fortasby is. Fortasby is Independent Smallholders, Indonesian Smallholder Forum. This is created by smallholder who already certified of RSPO, ISPO, and also ICC. Now we already have 10,000 of the smallholders is already certified, only 8,000. With the number of the group is 41 group. This is from around Indonesia. And actually, all of them is commit to go to the certification, and they are already implement the sustainability standard in the ground. And if you're asking about what the big challenge to support the independent smallholder to go to the certification is, the first one is the organization, because you know, in Indonesia, we have a bigger independent smallholder. We have maybe more than 2 million smallholders in Indonesia. But the problem is we have the problem in organization. Mostly of independent smallholders in Indonesia didn't have the organization. Organization is the requirement for the certification. The second one is legality of the land. This is also the big problem in Indonesia. Smallholders not aware that the legality of the land is very important right now. Very important. Even their farm is operated on the clean area. I mean, not in the forest area. But mostly of them is did not register their land, not register yet their land to the government. So why they didn't have the legality. And the third is lack of the knowledge. Independent smallholder, they only replicate what the company do in the farm. So why? So because they didn't get any support from local government and even from the mill. So I think this is the big challenge for the independent smallholder, how they can go to the certification. Especially in RSPO and ISPO and also ISCC certification. And the fourth is the lack support from the mill and local government. As we know that in all independent smallholders, no one group gets certification without support from the mill, even our members. Yeah, so we identify that all of our members who are already certified, they all of them is get support from mill and also the local government. They cannot do alone. Thank you, Teresa.
Thanks so much, Uki. Really great to hear from you. Joel, I'll come to you next as well, you know, talking about this issue of smallholders, and, you know, maybe tell us a little bit about the panorama there in Colombia, and then what kind of support you're finding smallholders there need. Thanks.
Well, hi, Teresa, and thank you for the invitation. In Colombia, we're talking about approximately 5,000 smallholders, which make up 80% of the total producer population. And our work as Solidaridad is mainly to support them with producer-centric solutions, being it, let's say, in the part of training, be it in the part of finance, or any other tools that we develop together with these producers. What we see is that it's a long road for smallholders to adopt the practices of, for example, RSPO or any other voluntary sustainability standards. And we see key challenges in the access to finance, basically on what they currently have as a performance, where to go in terms of a roadmap, and also how to get there in terms of technical assistance. And adopting these new practices also comes with a price tag, and that is often a barrier for smallholders. Investments for small farms are relatively higher when you consider the size of their land, but also rewards are relatively lower for smaller size farms. So you have to find the right balance. And what we see there is that for many financial institutions as well, smallholders do not have the credit risk profile that is interesting enough or that's beyond their scope. So we see a few challenges, but we also see a few solutions there.
Thanks so much, Joel. And perhaps we can talk a little bit more about those solutions as well. Obviously, something we want to be bringing into the conversation as well. Inka, I want to come back to you and talk a little bit more about the progress that RSPO has made in recent years to push the industry in the right direction. Obviously, this is a huge challenge. It's why it's not done yet, right? And it's like everyone knows exactly how this needs to go, but it's really difficult to actually get there. So tell us a little bit sort of from your organizational perspective, what challenges you face, and how other players, whether it's NGOs or civil society networks or farmers organizations, can sort of work with you to solve some of these challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. So fortunately, we've seen a steady growth in membership, certified area, but also in uptake of certified sustainable palm oil. And I really believe that we've evolved from a certification standard to a platform for the sector where all of the stakeholders can convene, work in partnerships, work with new technologies to make sustainable palm oil the norm. That's our mission as a membership-based organization. For example, the development of technologies, you can think about hotspot monitoring, geo-RSPO, where we transparently report about all of the plantations that our members have in ownership. But also for social indicators, we have our companies are piloting worker voice technologies. So for partnerships, I think about jurisdictional approach, that's a landscape approach to certification and sustainable production, and smallholder programs, of course. So we need to do more to reach scale and conserve important ecosystems and human rights. Coming back, if you allow me, to the smallholders. Smallholders generally suffer from lower yields due to the lack of awareness, not having access to high-yielding crop, and not receiving trainings on best agricultural practices. So in 2019, RSPO launched the Smallholder Training Academy to help the capacity of smallholders through access to high-quality training, training guides, materials on practical tools, and of course, best management practices. So I absolutely agree with my fellow panelists that access to finance is a challenge for smallholders. They have to do environmental and social impact assessments. They have to perhaps replant. And you have to think about, if you do replanting of your entire concession as a smallholder, you will not have income for 3 to 4 years because the oil palms need to mature. So there's major barriers for smallholders that need to be addressed. Also, smallholders have to set aside forests or high conservation value areas that they cannot develop under the RSPO standards. And that costs money to preserve, but also you cannot have oil palms on that piece of land. So what RSPO discovered is, like Uki said, there's millions of smallholders that we need to reach. And the barrier to the RSPO standard is quite significant. It's quite a high standard. So what they need is a phased approach to full compliance of the standard. So RSPO has developed an independent smallholder standard where they can step by step reach that full compliance, and during that process already receive financial incentives for the change that they're already making.
Excellent. Thanks so much. So many good points there that I want to go back to. The first one I'm going to pull out is the technology piece. That's something we heard about in the fireside chat with Gar and Coltiva just before this panel. And Uki, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, the role that technology should be playing, is currently playing with your farmers, what kind of barriers there might be to that, and what progress can be made if farmers do have access to the right technology.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, as I know that in the ground is the problem for the smallholders is the technology. Mostly of them, for the simple one, is like a smartphone. Mostly of them didn't have the smartphone. So this is also the big problem and also a big challenge for us, how to introduce what the technology, because if they want to like more sustainability, so that means they have to use the technology to like record their farming activities, and also to to monitor what happen in their farm. So, but we need time to like introduce the technology for the smallholder. But we are happy with the RSPO because RSPO now provide information about the hotspot. So based on that, we know where the area is in the fire, so we can like control our member to ensure that they are not use the fire during the dry season. So I think yeah, we have to like put our responsibility to ensure that the technology will understand by the smallholders. But this is, yeah, we need time to like give them the information about the importance, the technology is very important to them.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, right? You know, access obviously remains an issue. As you mentioned, you know, if farmers actually have a smartphone, there can be so many cool apps. You know, I've been in last in Guatemala and saw, you know, a farming group that had a really cool app that, you know, gave farmers so much information about different crop prices and the weather and when they should be planting and irrigating and all this stuff. But if you don't have a smartphone or if you don't have connectivity, none of it matters. And, you know, then you have these tools that, you know, farmers really can't use and actually be utilizing. Joel, what does the technology piece look like in Colombia? You know, how are smallholders adopting that? And, you know, what, if any, are the barriers there? I imagine some of them are quite similar.
Yeah, I think barriers are similar, and I think the way to overcome this is in two lines of work. On the one hand, we say don't use only digital, also use analog parts. So using a blended approach, it is usually best for farmers to slowly adapt, let's say, the digital skills that they need in order to operate these type of apps. And on the other hand, what we see is access to data coverage. Data coverage you can solve with, on the one hand, you can do satellite-based internet, which is currently growing in some more areas, or share points where you have, let's say, satellite internet access, or we bring that as well to the farmers with, let's say, specific equipment of field technicians. So field technicians also can bring, let's say, temporary points there. On the other hand, what we see is working a lot offline. So a lot what you do not necessarily has to be online. You can do a lot of work offline, which also helps for a lot of farmers to take their time and do it in their on their daily agenda. You know, that it really fits on what they in terms of times they have available to work with those tools. Last but not least, I think the technology as well, it's a tool. It's a tool for a certain objective. So we also see like the way you use the data is also important. So it's also about how can we make more benefit or take more benefit out of the use of these tools for the farmers themselves as well. So it's a lot of design around the farmers when you apply this technology.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Inka, I want to come back to you and something that you mentioned before, and maybe see if you can expand on it a little bit. You talked about sort of the phased approach that we need for smallholders, because obviously the standards are quite high, and, you know, rightfully so, right? If the standards don't mean anything, there's no point in having them. So they, you know, they have to be quite high so that they actually represent, you know, the integrity of the supply chain and really ensuring traceability in that way. But tell us a little bit more about sort of that phasing and how, you know, a smallholder who might say, oh, I mean, you know, I have very limited land, limited resources, limited access to technical assistance. I just don't even know where to begin here. You know, how can someone sort of get into the system of thinking about traceability, thinking about sustainability, and then be able to progress to being certified by RSPO?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's one of the struggles that we all have is reaching the farmers. So like we said at the beginning, farmers need to be organized in cooperatives or groups so that they can share learnings, and training can be given to them so that they evolve in their compliance. So when they start, it's usually by forming a group. They often have supporting organizations like for TASPI or other NGOs or finance sector or companies like GAR supporting the smallholder group in that process. And then there is, in the first phase, there's an audit So all of the smallholders have to sign a declaration that they understand the process and the content of the standard that they are working on. And then there's an independent audit to see whether all of the smallholders fit with the definition and understand the principles that they have to adhere to. Once that audit has taken place, they can already sell a certain percentage of their fresh fruit bunches that contain the oil to the market as credits. So there's ways for market players to support these farmers in an early stage of their certification process. Then within 2 years, they have to reach the next level of compliance. And during those 2 years, you will see that a lot of things that they need to change are based on training. So they really need a support system to give them the training to work towards compliance to all of the principles. And then there's the next phase where they are at 100% compliance. Just a little bit more about that market support. I think apart from the fact that it is complex and expensive to start these projects, it's also difficult to involve the market in early processes, right? Because you will hear that companies will want to ensure that they're not linked to deforestation or human rights violations. So it's maybe risky to start with a project with farmers where you don't know that there's already 100% compliance. But I really like the standard in that sense that you work on direct positive impact on the ground, and you ensure that the farmers can actually eventually reach that same level of compliance. For bigger companies, it's just easier to have the access to the information, change their practices, and ensure that they produce sustainable. But for the smallholder farmers, there are more support mechanisms needed to achieve the same.
Uki, from your perspective, how is that system functioning? Do you feel like there are still gaps? I mean, what kind of role or support does Fortasby need to be then supporting farmers in this process? Do you feel like it's something that really is achievable for your smallholders?
Okay. I think everyone have responsibility to to accelerate the sustainability standard implementation among independent smallholders. I think the RSPOs already put their rule that they provide the simple standard, or maybe not simple but high standard for the smallholders. They have the strong standard about the stepwise approach. This is the one first, the one. The second is also after the certification, RSP also provide the incentive. And also in PNC for the big grower, there is also the inclusion of the smallholder also mentioned in the criteria of 5.148. So the mill have to support independent smallholder to go to the certification. So I think this is already the all standard is already there. But now actually for supporting the smallholder for the certification, because the first step is very costly. So actually we need the strong commitment from the mill and also the buyer to provide the program to support the independent smallholder to preparing for the certification. Because in the firstly, before they go to certification, this is very costly for the mapping, for the training, for the organizing, and etc., and also for the audit. But after the certification, RSP already provide the incentive. So so if the smallholders get the certified, so they can independently, because they already get the support from RSPO to continue and manage their certification. So I want to say that the commitment from the mill and also buyer is very need for accelerate the implementation of the sustainability in the ground.
Thanks so much, Uki. Inka, I'd love to hear back to you on that as well, sort of how you view the weight of the responsibility and sort of how much really should be on the millers, the larger companies, whether it's companies like GAR, other large manufacturers, versus on the smallholders. Because obviously, the smallholders are the one doing the farming, but as Uki just described, have the least resources in this entire supply chain. So, in your view, who really has the most responsibility, and how is that sort of spread out through the supply chain, and everyone involved sort of given the tools that they need to actually make this happen?
Yeah, that's a good question, and our SPO has struggled a little bit with that question, and we came up with a solution that we're still implementing. We're not there yet. So it's called shared responsibility. So what we ask from our grower members is all grower members, so large companies and small companies, they have to all work towards sustainable production within a certain time frame. For the market players, that was up to the market. So now, since 2 years, we have, or 3, I should say, we have shared responsibility requirements where we say other stakeholders, so it's the buyers from the growers, those are called processors and traders, consumer goods manufacturers and retailers, they have the requirement to increase their consumption, the purchase of certified sustainable palm oil every year. And then the supporting organizations have a responsibility to encourage and promote the sustainable production and consumption. So all of these stakeholders, and I think that's the theme of the event today, why do we need this multi-stakeholder setting, is because one stakeholder group will not succeed on its own. We need that collaboration. We need the support. For smallholders, it's interesting that you say these are eventually the growers. They are. And let's not forget, there's millions, but also many of them have lifted themselves out of poverty because they're able to plant oil palms, which is a fantastic crop. And we do want to see that economic development should not come at the expense of forests or community rights or other sustainability indicators. So it's very important that they adhere to the RSPO standards. So one stakeholder group that I've not mentioned, and I feel that this is the right time to speak about it, is government engagement. So what we see in producing countries is more efforts to protect and conserve forests, but also the call from consuming countries to halt imported deforestation. So I think, and I should recognize that these initiatives are there and extremely valuable to accelerate the progress that we are making. RSPO has currently certified 19% of the global production. We need to find new ways to grow that faster. We want the entire sector to be sustainable, and all of the different partners are necessary to achieve that goal.
Joel, I'd love to come to you on that government piece. Thinking about the role that governments should and can be playing in limiting deforestation. Colombia, incredibly biodiverse, rich country. I actually used to live there, so have had the opportunity to see a lot of its beauty. From your perspective, what is the Colombian government doing to incentivize farmers to protect biodiversity, to halt deforestation, while as Inka just said, there's a reason that people farm palm oil, and it's because it can make them money and lift them out of poverty. And obviously meeting basic needs is people's main goal. So tell us a little bit about what it looks like in Colombia.
Yeah, I think the perspective in Colombia is quite particular. We do well have on the one hand, we have the Amazon. On the other hand, there's no palm oil planted in the Amazon. In Colombia, the areas where palm oil is being produced is mainly on areas where there have been previously other agricultural crops, meaning that that resulted in that we only have a 0.2% of all deforestation in the last 6 years that is being linked to palm oil plantations. So it's a very good result there. But the question there is, how do you prove that? And also, how do you ensure that to your customers and your buyers? So on the one hand there, we're working with the sector in a implementation of a domestic zero deforestation agreement, where you have the government on board, that was one of the leading partners there. And on the other hand, you have the different palm oil mills, but also you have the different companies on board. So we're working basically from a public-private perspective there in order to ensure that zero deforestation policy. And I think that's critical here, that you always have the connection between public and private here. From a public perspective, what we also need is that the deforestation, what is not related to palm oil, also is being controlled. And in Colombia, we have the particular condition that a lot of the deforestation is linked in areas where there are armed groups due to the conflict in the country, which is something which is affecting negatively the image perhaps of the different agriculture crops. But if you really look into the details there, it requires a government effort much more to provide security some areas and control areas, rather than that we go for the agricultural part. So in that sense, I would say we have a particular condition, but the good news is that palm oil is not, let's say, a deforestation related crop in Colombia.
Great. Thanks so much, Joel. And we've just got a few minutes left. And one thing that we've touched on a little bit, but I want to get at more directly is financing. Uki, I'd love to come to you on this. As you know, I think we've laid out here is, you know, meeting all these standards, doing these things, getting smallholders in a place where they can comply. It's expensive and they don't necessarily have the resources. What more needs to be done from the international community to make sure that financing really is targeted directly at these smallholders that need the support?
Yeah, actually, this is the problem for smallholders is also financing. So I think, yeah, everyone have to provide the program and finance for the smallholders to implement the sustainability. So yeah, I think yeah, the mill or the buyers and also the other stakeholders like local government also have to provide the finance to support the independent smallholder to implement the sustainability.
Inka, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, what does the international community need to be doing? Is this something that we need to see major financiers like the World Bank more involved in? Is this something that IFAD or FAO should be more engaged in? I mean, where should this financing be coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we all need to invest more in sustainable production and supporting that. Send true incentives to farmers that have changed their practices to meet the RSPO standards, so around deforestation and human rights violations. Also, the other part that I think we're missing is we need more finances towards nature conservation and restoration projects. It is very difficult for farmers to preserve nature in a landscape, and it would make far more sense to have connected biodiversity hotspots and funding to conserve it. Then the other thing that we should absolutely also think about is how we ensure that community rights are protected. So that's the other thing that really we should all be aware of. And I'm sure that the finance sector, but also World Bank and FAO could support in these three different finance streams.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And Joel, another question for you as we're ending here. I'd love to sort of take this bigger picture and talk a little bit about what the stakes are if we're not able to get full traceability. Why is this so important, both for farmers and their livelihoods, but as well for the planet?
I think in general, what the stakes here mainly are with involving these smallholders and getting them on board. What we see right now, these traceability commitments, they are, let's say, on top of what we already have, let's say, with the different sustainability standards. We already hear that 90% is currently RSPO certified. That means that there is, let's say, still a lot of progress that we can make in that regard. I think there, in the end, it's a market-driven model, meaning that without sufficient market pool, the growth of also the sales is also something under risk. So I think there also we not only have to look at international markets, but also to the domestic markets in these producer countries, which play a huge role in terms of the absorption of all that production that is from these countries. And I think there, this more tailored domestic approach, where we can work together there with both financial institutions, but also the companies, in allowing them to have the traceability. I think there's a lot of potential there that we can make progress in the coming years.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Joel. And I think that's a great place to end, thinking about the ways that we can be making progress and can be accelerating these moves towards traceability and sustainability. Thank you so much to our panel for joining us today. I really appreciate you all being with us throughout your various time zones. Inka, my many apologies for tragically butchering your name, but thank you for your patience. It was a really great conversation. So great being with all of you. Thanks so much for tuning in to our audience. Thanks so much to Golden Agri Resources, our presenting partner for this event. I also want to put in a little plug. I am Devex's food systems reporter. I write our food systems newsletter, Devex Dish, and we explore issues like this, like sustainability, impact on smallholders, all of the related topics each week. So would love for you to join us. You can go to Devex's website. If you just Google Devex Dish, you can find us and join us. So thank you so much again to our panel. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.